Okay, guys, the time has come. Oh, I sounded so gross there. Let's leave that behind. Bad intro. I'm the king of bad intros. I'm used to it. The time has come for us to do our second tier list. This is going real bad. I had peace signs for. It's our second tier list. Yes, tier list. We're ranking them from S tier, the absolute best of the best, to F tier. We've all been to school. We know what an F is. It means failure. But what are we looking at today? I mean, last week we looked at luxury streetwear brands like Off-White, Palm Angels, brands like that. But there were some notable absences from that list that, if you're talking about luxury clothing, you'd expect to see. And that's because I was saving those for this video. That's right, today we are looking at the high luxury menswear brands. So that's brands like Gucci, Prada, Balenciaga, so on and so forth. We've got 20 of them lined up. It's going to be so sick. And let's work out the criteria here. So I'm only going to be looking at, current pieces, recent seasons, and we're looking at menswear. Obviously, some houses, they're very different from women's wear to menswear. So we're looking at recent menswear and ranking them on that and where I think they fall relative to each other. So it's going to be spicy, it's going to be fun, let's fucking do it. But first, I've looked into it, and a very small percentage of you are actually subscribed to the channel. It's completely free. Just press that button and you will not regret it. Thank you so much. Alright, the first brand we're going to be looking at here is Alexander Mcqueen. Of course, unfortunately, Mcqueen is no longer with us, so the brand is no longer run by him, of course. Instead, it is run by Sarah Burton, who I think has been there for like 14 years working at Mcqueen now and running that brand. And I actually think Mcqueen is really underrated in some ways, at least. So, of course, going back to Mcqueen himself and his work, the tailoring is top-notch. Like, maybe some of the best tailoring on this list out of anyone here. I'm not going to say the best of the best because there's some really heavy hitters in this list, but Mcqueen can run alongside any of them and hold up really well. There's some also incredible knits there. The knitwear is really sick, and I like that a lot. A lot of work with patterns and stuff like that. So there's some variety there, and there are definitely certain areas where Alexander Mcqueen really shines. But the downside of that is that Mcqueen doesn't always surprise me. It's kind of similar stuff season after season, playing within the same kind of playgrounds, which is good. It's nice to have an identity and do things that are recognizable and have your kind of brand image and ethos attached to them, so that's great. But it's rare that I see a Mcqueen show and say, whoa, that wowed me, I wasn't expecting that, that was incredible. Instead, it's just like, oh, that was great, that was awesome. So, and that may be due to the fact that Mcqueen, unfortunately, was not with us on this earth creating clothing for that long. And the brand of Alexander Mcqueen, even more so than many on this list, Alexander Mcqueen, the brand, is very connected still to Mcqueen the designer and his archives and his styles. It's very, I don't know, it's very reverential of Mcqueen's work, Mcqueen the designer. So I think maybe the archives of Mcqueen and the language, maybe there isn't as much to pull from as some of these other brands. Like if you're going through the history of Dior or Gucci, brands like that, Louis Vuitton, there's so much to go back to and pull from decades and decades of work. But Mcqueen, it's a really small slice compared to those. So it's kind of tough, and I feel their pain. But that being said, the stuff that they do really well. So Mcqueen is actually going to be a B. I have to say, I'm tempted to put it in C, right middle of the pack, but the stuff that they do is so good. Even if there's not as much of a breadth and not as much of a wow factor, it's really incredible, so I've got to give credit there. and it's going to land right into that B. And if they start taking more chances, if Burton starts kind of pushing herself and expanding that design language and the reach and breadth of the brand, it could easily be an A. But right now, it's a B, honestly bordering on a C. Let's call it like a B minus. Next up is going to be, oh man, we're getting right into it here. It is Balenciaga. I mean, look at my hoodie right now. If you know anything about me, you know that I love Balenciaga. It's some of the best. I'm gonna go right ahead here. Balenciaga is S tier, unquestionably in my mind. So I'm gonna just lay that out there, put it there to start off with, and now I'll start to explain. So Balenciaga now is run by Dimna Visalia, and as I said in this video, we're really only focusing on current work, so that's all we're looking at here. And Dimna is like, he is a fucking genius. I don't know what else to say. He comes up with some of the most incredible ideas. It's unlike anybody else on this list. The fits, the references, it has a great sense of humor to it. Like, he's kind of a troll if you think of some of the like football shirts and cleats and stuff like that. Some of the stuff he does is just designed to make people angry, but it makes them pay attention to him and pay attention to the incredible fashion that he's actually making. He's really created some silhouettes that before him in the modern fashion world, people were not doing. Like, think of his insane shoulders. He really likes to buff up the chest and shoulders in really interesting ways. He just consistently impresses me. And of course, the footwear, going back to the Triple S all the way through recent times with like the Tyrex, it's incredible stuff. He is just on another level compared to almost anyone else on this list, and he's really pushing the space forward. So, Dimna, I love you. You are S tier. You're a step above anybody else, in my opinion. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at Balmain. Balmain. I always got to be careful when I say that. Some people say Balmain, and hey, you don't know what you're talking about if you say Balmain. It's Balmain. Very French, you know? So, that's completely besides the point and very rude. Say how you want. I don't care how people say brand names. Some people care a lot. I really don't. Balmain. So they are run by Olivier Rousting, something like that. I have trouble with his last name. I'm not sure exactly how to say it. And this is an interesting one. Balmain is kind of schizophrenic. I don't feel like I have a clear idea of their point of view. At some points, Olivier is really pulling from the archives. Like, he does these really beautiful kind of military jackets, stuff like that, tailoring that's very much within the Balmain lineage. And then at other times, he's doing like crazy spaceman stuff that honestly sometimes can look good, but I just don't see a coherent vision here for the House of Balmain. And some of this stuff, I think he's just still figuring it out. He's very young, and he clearly has a lot of ideas and a lot of skill. But right now, it just hasn't cohered into a complete whole that makes sense together. Some of the shoes I actually really like. There are these weird basketball sneakers with a strap that like goes through the sole that I've been looking for a long time that I'd love to have a pair of. I have some Balmain pieces that I really love, great monogram like velour sweater. There's some great pieces there, but as a whole, it's a D, because he's just having trouble figuring it out, in my opinion, and figuring out what his Balmain actually is. So he clearly has tons of talent, and I think he can continue to figure it out and refine because the core is there and the creativity is there, but I just want to see him kind of find his individual voice, that's all. The next brand we are going to be looking at is Bottega Veneta. Bottega Veneta. See, I look these things up and I check out how to say them because certain ones of these everyone says different. I don't know why I'm focusing so much on how to say these things. Bottega. We're just going to go with that. Bottega is designed by Daniel Lee now. And it's kind of tough for me to judge here because it's not necessarily my cup of tea. I think actually in the vibe there are quite a few similarities to brands like Hermes. It's kind of straightforward, refined, very high-end, very well done. The colors, the palette that Daniel uses is very it's black, earth tones, grays, browns, things like that. And it's just really, really refined menswear, quite simple with these small tweaks and little things done to kind of put them over the top and make them more like high fashion, right? So there's clearly a lot of talent there, and I really respect it, and there are pieces that I do like quite a bit, but and this brand has become really, really popular lately. It's kind of blown my mind because they don't have those kind of hype items, in my opinion, the things that you can just look at on an Instagram feed and say, holy shit, that's next level, I have to have that. But they've really built up a kind of cult around themselves, and it's growing more and more every day. So that's quite impressive, actually. But for me, I am not personally a part of that cult, that following yet. So I'm also going to put Bottega in D. And it's one of those things, as I see more, it could easily move up here. Like, this one's hard for me to judge because this is more just a personal, this is just my tier list, right? There's nothing more I can say or do to judge other than say, this is what I think about it. And since the clothes don't usually speak to me, I can't put it any higher, even if it's clearly very good clothing. So that's all I really have to say about Bottega. I'm sorry, Daniel. You're clearly a very talented guy. Next up is going to be Burberry. Oh, where do we start here? So Burberry these days is designed by Riccardo Tisci, previously of Givenchy. He was very, very successful there. You know, if you think about like the Rottweiler stuff with Kanye, he really pushed that forward. The entire concept, even before Balenciaga and Demna, I'd say the entire concept of the like $800, $1,000 sweatshirt, streetwear in luxury thing started with Givenchy and Riccardo Tisci, so props to him for that. But again, we're not talking about that ancient history, we're talking about now. And now he is at Burberry, which is very, very different from Givenchy. It's, first of all, of course, it's a British brand rather than a French brand, and the history is also incredibly different. So Burberry is known for sort of like stuffy British aristocratic outerwear, you know, trench coats, Novacek, stuff like that. And I really feel like Tisci has struggled to find himself and his own voice within that. So every collection you get these ideas that are at odds with each other, where you've got the history and the classic silhouettes, the trench coats and the Novacek patterns, with the crazy kind of creativity, graphic, out there work of Tisci, and you've got them both, and they've never quite managed to meld. And throw in the fact, I'll bring this up every time I talk about this, that he came up with this hideous, hideous monogram for the brand when everybody needed a monogram, you know, logomania vibes. They've got probably one of the worst monograms out of anybody on this list. But on the other hand, so those are the negatives. The positives is that when you take it off the runway and you're just looking at it as pieces, you know, in a boutique or on a website, you're just scrolling through your feed, the pieces, just as ready-to-wear pieces, are very good, actually. All the time I see myself looking at a Burberry piece and say, oh, I think that would look great on me. And Burberry is actually a brand that I have a really strong connection to. I have to wear more kind of professional, formal stuff quite a bit, like button-down stuff like that, and Burberry is like, mwah, they're the best of the best for that. It's really great clothing for those purposes. So I'd love to see him figure it out more. So again, we're going with the things that actually I like. So a lot of these brands I'm judging by their runway presentations, their full collections, but I'm actually surprisingly going to put Burberry in a C just for the individual pieces, not the whole looks, because Tisci is creating enough pieces that are actually really amazing that I think he deserves to be right here in C. And if he can continue to meld those things, the history and his own vision, he could easily bump up to a B. I don't know if it could ever get higher than that, but he's clearly a really talented dude, and I think he has the capability of meshing those two things together if he's given the time. Next up is going to be Celine from Eddie Slimane. Ooh, where do we start here? I have a whole video on the channel, you should definitely watch it, about people and their ideas towards Eddie. So he is somebody that is very maligned. You either love him or you hate him, and the people that hate him really hate him with a passion. And I don't know, I think it's because people feel like he's a one-trick pony. He came up with the whole like rock revival, skinny black jeans look, and he really rode that through for a long time, like at Saint Laurent, brands like that. But now he's at Celine, and when he first started, it was a little bit more of the same, but as he's grown into his role there, he's really branched out, I think, and his recent collections show that, and they have quite a bit of breadth, and he's not even doing the skinny stuff anymore. He's really going into the modern trends of oversized and layering. You know, he is a master of layering. So if you just watch their presentations, I think he's doing some of the best collections out of anybody on this list right now. I don't think he is like a trailblazer in the sense that he's not a Demna Gvasalia. He's not blazing new paths within fashion. He's just doing what he does, but he's doing it really fucking well, and it's really covetable stuff, and nobody else is doing anything like it. Celine is an A. I'm actually kind of surprising myself with that, but I can't bring myself to put them any lower or any higher. So Eddie, well done. You're our first A. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at Dior from Kim Jones. And we'll also be talking about Kim a little bit later with Fendi. Of course, he's not doing menswear there, just women's wear, but he's designing for two massive houses, which is really impressive. Obviously, he does very well for these brands commercially. And I think he's been quite successful at Dior. His stuff, really, really well made. I think maybe more so than anyone else on this list, he's pushed forward the idea of the collaboration. He's always bringing in new artists and collaborators every season to kind of refresh the ideas within the house. He recognizes that he's only one person, and bringing in a multitude of voices to speak for the brand can only do good things and widen the reach and the kind of voice of these pieces. So I find that quite impressive. Sometimes I respect the idea of it more than the actual outcome. So I think he's a really smart dude and a really talented dude, but sometimes I look at the pieces and I'm like, okay, yeah, that was a Dior show. And I didn't get much more than that. So, oh man, this is a really tough one. Dior is a solid B pushing on an A because he's doing just about everything he can do. There's not much he can do better. So that makes it hard for me to say. It's just, again, sometimes that wow factor isn't always there. Next up, we're going to be talking about, oh my fucking god, Dolce & Gabbana. I've also got some videos about this on the channel. Dolce & Gabbana are absolute trash. So we're going to start off by putting them at an F, and we'll just explain from there. So first off, the designers are absolute pieces of crap, okay? They are homophobic, racist, just so out of touch. So that alone earns them an F. But then if you look at their clothes too, it's like dumbass middle-aged Italian dudes making like wannabe Asian Middle Eastern style stuff. It's just really trashy and really tacky, and I don't understand why anyone still wears it, both because the clothes are bad and because the designers are pieces of garbage. All right, next up we are going to be talking about Etro. And actually, this is like perfect after Dolce & Gabbana to be talking about, because I think there are actually a lot of similarities here. So here's the upside. As far as I'm aware, Etro does not have the same terrible politics as Dolce & Gabbana. But design-wise, there are tons and tons of things they have in common. So Etro also is an Italian brand that uses these kind of Middle Eastern, Asian patterns and vibes in their pieces to give them their kind of voice. They're taking ownership of something they have no right to take ownership of, and it's very inauthentic to me, honestly. It's very well made, of course, but everything on this list is well made. If it's not, that's a bigger problem. Like, you don't even belong here if your shit isn't well made. Like, you're charging thousands of dollars for this stuff. But I own a couple Etro pieces. I like them. They're nice, but trust me when I say it, I did not I did not pay full price for them, and I never would, because it's not worth it for what you're getting. So the thing, Etro, they also belong in F for me, and it's because they make very boring pieces, very simple silhouettes, nothing creative at all, and then in order to put them over the top and make them luxury fashion, they throw on these really, really loud paisley prints and patterns and stuff like that, and just try and let those patterns carry the pieces. But it's not enough, and you can get authentic pieces from designers in those regions. You don't have to get it from an Italian brand that's just appropriating those styles and looks. So it's just kind of pointless to me. Next up, we are going to be talking about Fendi. So this is designed by Silvia Fendi. She is, I think, the daughter of the founder, if I remember correctly, and she's been doing it for a long, long time. And Fendi's an interesting one. Obviously, very well respected. They're one of the kind of top luxury brands, I'd say, in that kind of conversation with the Gucci's and Dior's and Louis Vuittons and stuff. They're one of the top of the top. Kim Jones from Dior is now doing the women's wear there, but Silvia, interestingly, is continuing to do the menswear. And she kind of has her voice down. Like, when you see a Fendi piece, I don't know if people really realize this, Fendi has a very, very clear design language. When you see a piece that's Fendi, you can clock it pretty immediately as Fendi, especially when it comes to the outerwear, the kind of quilting techniques that they do on stuff, the coats. It's very, very, very much a part of the voice that she has created over time, and it's really, really nice. But there's also, for such a loud brand and a brand that's so known for their monogram and their logo and printing that in furs and stuff like that, this stuff can get a little bit stale sometimes. Like, I don't know if there's enough that they're coming out with to push the envelope and really, again, because they're S tier, I'm going to keep going back to Balenciaga. Obviously, I don't want everyone to be Balenciaga, but I wish more people would think like Balenciaga and think like Dimna and think about, what can I do to do something that nobody has seen before? So, in my opinion, Fendi is a really solid C. Like, Fendi is the definition of a C brand in my mind. And that leads us to Gucci. Oh my God. Where do we even begin? So Gucci these days is designed by Alessandro Michele. He has been there since 2015, and he's really, really reinvigorated the house. After Tom Brown left, and then there was, I honestly have forgotten her name now. Her stuff was very forgettable in my mind. I think Gucci was really, really stale. They'd been in this very refined, high-end, sleek, sexy space since Tom Brown. But Alessandro Michele came in and just blew that shit up. But while still staying true to the roots, like, Gucci is very, very classic, very reverential to the history and the iconography of the brand, but his voice is just so unique within this space. So he's really brought in like a 70s vibe to the house. It's very retro, kind of kooky, a bit like, I've called it like thrift store grandpa looks, kind of uncool in a way that makes it cool. Some of the looks almost look like I don't know, like Pokemon trainers in Pokemon or something. Like, it's kind of cute, little short shorts, stuff like that. 70s, as I said. But somehow he's done it in a way that's really, really fucking cool. And again, unique among this entire group of designers. No one else is making pieces like that. However, in the past season or two, it started to get a little bit samey, which is crazy because he's been doing things that are so different from anybody else here. But the things that he does, those different things, they're starting to become different in the same way over and over. But just due to that originality, Gucci is an A tier these days with Alessandro. Maybe a year ago, I would have made Gucci S tier, unquestionable. But these days, I think it's dropped down to an A. And if he just continues to spice it up and tweak things a little bit, he can easily bump back into S, in my opinion. All right, now it's time to talk about Hermes. Where do I begin here? So Hermes, of course, they're super, super well known as mostly a bag brand and a women's wear brand. Of course, they've got the Birkin. They go for like hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're one of the most coveted brands in the entire world, maybe the most expensive as well. And people look to them as an example within this industry, in this space, because they are able to charge more than anyone else. They never have to go on sale. They're just looked to as an example within this space. But their menswear is a different story, in my opinion. So it's designed by, what's her name? Veronique Nichanian, something like that. She's someone who I'm not familiar with her history, so all I have to judge her on is her work at Hermes, and it really has not impressed me in any way. I think this stuff is really, really boring. Really plain pieces, kind of slightly oversized fits, but not in a way that I find interesting. Occasionally, she'll throw in some relatively cool prints and patterns, but nothing special, although it is nice to see at least some color and stuff like that in there, because everything else is so plain. She'll sometimes throw in some cool elements, like an interesting removable collar on a piece where you wouldn't expect that. So they're saving graces, but I'm being very charitable here. That's me finding everything I possibly can to kind of say is a positive there. The stuff clearly made very well. Even from pictures and videos, you can tell it's very nice fabric, stuff like that, but everybody on this list, it should be made well. So I don't think that's a huge point in their favor. So Hermes is a solid D, and from what I've seen, I don't see it going any further either. And on an interesting note there, we've also got Lanvin. These French European brand names are giving me so much trouble here. Lanvin. So they have had a lot of turnover with designers. Most recently, I think just like a year and a half ago, they brought in Bruno Cialelli. And he's been slowly but surely working to turn this house around, because they were a house that had zero hype behind them. No one gave a fuck about Lanvin in the kind of fashion space. In my opinion, I wasn't hearing them being talked about. And at first, I think he was having some trouble. Like, I remember, I think it was spring 2020, that collection was a complete bore fest. Like, it was just European tailoring, kind of Dolce & Gabbana vibes. It was just bleh. But then the most recent season I saw was actually cool as hell. They had all this graphic stuff going on, really interesting pieces, interesting fits. It kind of reminded me a bit of brands like OAMC. And also in their favor, in Cialelli's favor, he's been doing some really cool stuff with footwear as well. Like, they've got this shoe called the Curb, which is essentially like a massive skate shoe, like in the style of old 2000s, like DC Osiris shoes. And they're some of the best luxury shoes I've seen in a long, long time. So props to them on that. And I've got a Lanvin piece that I love. It's like a polo shirt, but with these striped sleeves coming in. It makes me look like I'm working at a 7-Eleven or a convenience store or something, but in like a high fashion way, so that's sick. So Lanvin right now, solid C. And I think if we were just going off the most recent season, it'd be a B. But then the one before that would have been a D. So I'm going to average it out to a C. And if CLLE keeps doing what he's been doing with his past season and does it that well continually, easy B going forward. So we'll see where things go, but I'm happy to see the progression that we've got here. Next up, we've got to talk about Loewe. And this is an exciting one. I'm happy to talk about this. So Loewe is a Spanish brand, which I don't know if there are any other Spanish brands on this list. So props to them on that. They stand alone there in this space. And also, even better, is that they're designed by Jonathan Anderson, aka J.W. Anderson, who I've been a fan of for a long time from his own brand, J.W. Anderson, because he is just a wildly creative dude. He comes up with just incredible ideas. He's just like bursting with ideas, and his vision just shines through everything he does. His stuff is really colorful. It's very like gender fluid. Also, even bordering on queer at times, which I'm all about in fashion. Like, use that. If you are a queer person, take those looks and those vibes and put it into the clothes. I'm totally cool with that, and I can get down with that and even wear it, even though I'm a cis white male. But if the looks are good, I am all for it. So, Loewe, talking specifically about the pieces, they tend to be quite flowy, very easy. Loewe is historically a leather brand, so there's lots of leather in there. I think the pants from Loewe are absolutely incredible, really like billowy silhouettes, stuff like that. Incredible knits. Even just, sometimes it gets into like structural Comme des Garçons type like shapes and stuff like that. So Jonathan Anderson at Loewe, in my mind, he can do no wrong. He is really, really good. Where do I put him, though? I've just sung his praises. Loewe is... Oh, man, where do I put them? I know I just said so many positive things, but Loewe is a B, and a B is really, really good. Let me tell you that. If you look, we've got Fendi and Balmain below them, like great brands. So B is awesome. But the only reason I don't put them higher is because it's almost too playful sometimes. Like, this is a really expensive, high luxury brand, and playfulness is good, but I think you also need some weight, and sometimes that weight is missing. So you just need that importance and the history with it instead of just like fun. And it's very, very fun. And fun for me is a solid B. And that leads us to Louis Vuitton. So the LV, Virgil Abloh. Of course, he came from Off-White. He still designs for Off-White. And Off-White, in our last tier list, is a brand that we put in the S tier of luxury streetwear brands. So can he do a repeat here? I'm sure many of you are very familiar with the work that he does at Louis Vuitton. I love what he's doing to bring forward black creatives and people like that into the fold. He just created a Louis Vuitton skate shoe for the skater Lucien Clark, which is just like, that's a pro skate shoe model for a luxury brand. I think is absolutely incredible and a great idea. He'll do some structural pieces like the kind of like most editorial pieces from his most recent collection were these cityscapes on these jackets, which is just insane. And even looking back to the season before when he was doing the kind of like companion stuffed animals on pieces and stuff like that, very cool. But the tailoring is incredible, especially like you talk about the sky motifs and pieces with like cutouts and stuff like that. Again, the knits are, oh my fucking God, he is so good at knits, out of both between Off-White and Louis Vuitton. The shoes, I don't love. His eye for shoes at Louis Vuitton, I find to be very lackluster. It's a lot of like Jordan ripoff silhouettes in my opinion, which is nice, but I just like to see something different now and again from him. But it's very hard. That's one of my only complaints I have. He's already doing just about everything else he can be doing. So he's a solid A for me. With more time, he could be S tier. And I know people hate on him and dislike him for certain reasons, and I can understand that, but just what he's doing for fashion and for people of color in fashion, he's a very, very impressive dude. And he's a great designer, no matter what you want to say about him. I think that's inarguable. Now, we've got to talk about Montclair. And this is a really interesting one. So Montclair, they maybe actually belong on this list, maybe the least out of any of these. I definitely question whether to put them on, but I think their price point warrants it. They are clearly in that high luxury space when you're charging a couple $1,000s for a jacket and stuff like that. So, but all the rest of these brands have they have like a head designer and they're doing season after season and they're refining their voice, but Montclair doesn't. They don't have like a single creative director that's creating collections for them. Instead, what they do now is they have other designers come in and do collections for them. So they've got like guest designers that come in and they filter in and out. So just off the top of my head, they've got collections with Craig Green, J.W. Anderson. Who else do we have? They've done them with Alix, Fragment, Palm Angels. So it's really just like collaboration after collaboration, which is really interesting, but then you also don't have that clear history to look to and say, where's the progression here of these pieces year after year? Are they refining their voice? Are they finding it, losing it, stuff like that? So really, how good they are just depends on how good that season's collaboration is. Like, they've done collections with Alix that I think are just awful, like really, really, really bad. But then they'll do collections like, I thought the Palm Angels one was absolutely sick. And same with the Craig Green stuff is sculptural, insane. It's more art than it is fashion, I'd say. So Montclair, it's so weird. I think they've been great at picking their collaborators. They've been really smart about it. And it's probably kept them even more relevant than they would be with a single designer, because they're hitting all of these different kind of little pockets of the fashion fandoms for each designer. So they're casting such a wide net across the industry, which is really fucking smart. So Montclair's a solid C in my opinion. I don't know. You could argue to put them higher and I'd understand. You could argue to put them lower and I'd understand. So middle of the pack, I think, is the best I can do. I don't know what more I can say about that. But now, going on to a brand with much stronger designers, much clearer lead designers, Prada. So, of course, Miuccia Prada has been running this brand for ages, but just last year, she brought on the legendary Raf Simons to be her co-creative director of the brand. So they are 50-50 equals designing these collections now. And we've got a couple under our belt at this point, so we can really start to judge what this new Prada team up looks like. And I've been very impressed. Like, when you combine Miuccia's like ugly chic eye and her entire history and her archives of her vision with the clear genius of Raf Simons and his ideas. Sorry, I burped there. I had a little burp come out. I'm sorry. Like, it's so sick. It's kind of unbeatable. Like, you've got these crazy knit suits and stuff like that with these classic Prada patterns, incredible bomber jackets out of like fluo colored leathers. Like, I don't know, Prada. It's Prada. Even without Raf Simons, they would have been S tier. But now with him, like, the sky is the fucking limit for Prada at this point, because not only are you creating collaborative collections with two of the greatest designers of the past generation, but now you're also setting yourself up for once Miuccia decides to move on, you have the strongest possible head designer you could ask for in Raf Simons. So it's unfucking beatable. Next up, we've got to talk about Celeron. Where do we been here? So Celeron is designed by Anthony Vaccarello, previously by Eddie Slimane before he moved on to Celine, which we've rated quite highly here, as you can see. And Celeron, at this point, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what Vaccarello is thinking. I see very little changeover in the brand and what they're doing between when Eddie Slimane left and when Anthony Vaccarello took over. Usually when a new designer comes on, you see a switch, like, this is mine now, I'm gonna do what I want. But it still feels like he's really pulling from the Eddie Slimane playbook a lot of the time, that kind of like black rock and roll vibe, which is nice. There's good pieces, very good like ready-to-wear pieces that I'm sure you could just throw on and look great, feel great, all that stuff, but I just don't see a voice here. I don't have much more to say about it than that. So it's a like super solid D in my opinion. I just don't understand what he wants this brand to be, unfortunately. Now, let's get into Valentino. So Valentino is designed by Pier Paolo Piccoli, and he's, I'd say, most recognized and most revered for his like women's couture stuff, like insane gowns. He's one of the best at that stuff. But when it comes to the menswear, it's somewhat of a different story. In the co-ed shows, a lot of the time you see these women's pieces that are just like kind of blowing you away, like, whoa, these are really nice. And then you'll see the men thrown in there, it's like, oh, it's a tailored look. It's a fairly simple tailored look, a knit look, whatever it is. So that's kind of disappointing. And even like the solo men shows, there's some better stuff. Nice flower motifs. I think they've got one of the best monogram logos, like that V looks awesome when you put it on pieces of clothing. They also get into some really cheesy, dumb graphics, like I think it was the season before last, like Bad Lover he was putting on stuff, and it's just like, who wants to wear that? I don't know. Valentino Menswear, also a D. Oh, it's getting tough down here. This D one, it's tough because it even contains brands that I like. Like, I've got Valentino stuff. I've got Saint Laurent stuff. I've got Belmont stuff. I've got Bottega Veneta stuff. Like, I've got Etro stuff. But I'm talking about the houses as a whole. All of these brands make individual items that are really nice and that are probably worth grabbing, at least for me, at the right price. But I don't know. It's tough. You need to do more. These brands up here, they do it. They do the work. So with that, we've gotten to our very last brand here. So we are ending with Versace, designed by Donatella Versace. And she is an interesting one. So of course, Gianni Versace passed away. Donatella, his sister, took over. And she's been slowly but surely finding her way throughout the years with this. She has a very strong point of view, a very strong vision, a very strong reverence for her brother and what he did in creating the house. But for many years, I think it was quite samey and quite stale. Like, Versace was just Versace. It was doing what it was doing. It was colorful, printy, silks, flowy, very free. Like, it's good stuff, don't get me wrong, but it's like, I don't know, there wasn't as much heart in it. It was kind of just chugging along. But somehow in the past couple of years, maybe even just the past year, that started to turn around. Like, you're seeing a lot more exuberance in the brands and the clothing. The silhouette, something is just amped it up a level, and you've got these crazy day glow colors and prints, and suddenly they're having more life to them in a way that they didn't before. And it's actually been quite surprising to me, and I've been really happy to see it. And when you combine that with the fact that they've got some of the best shoes in the game. So you've got Salehe Bembury, if that's how you say it. He is their footwear designer, and he's one of the best in the game. Like, the chain reactions were honestly a revelation, and you've even got the Squallows now. Like, he's doing some great shoes for the house, and that's done them a lot of favors as well, because we all know accessories, footwear are very important to these houses. So you got the shoes, you've got the clothes getting back on track, and things are starting to sing here. Things are starting to move. So Versace has moved themselves very solidly into the B category, in my opinion, and that's somewhere that they weren't for quite some time, and they've landed there, and they could go even higher as time goes on, and I hope they do, because I've been really happy to see the resurgence of this really, really cool and unique brand. So that is my tier list of the top high luxury menswear fashion brands. You know, I've been happy with this. We looked at our Balenciagas and our Pradas and Hermes and Louis Vuitton and everything, and now we know where they stand. You know, some people are going to be mad with what I picked, some people are going to love it. You may be in between. Let me know in the comments whatever you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts. It's always so interesting to hear your guys' takes on this stuff. So thank you so much for watching. Take a look at the other video on screen here. Subscribe to my channel, like this video, and I'll see you next time.